This is a picture of my granddaughter, Annie. Isn't she the most beautiful grandchild you've ever seen? Aren't yours? She looks just like I did at that age. Trouble is, she's now 12 and I haven't seen her in 8 years. That's 8 Christmases, 8 Halloweens, 8 Valentine's Days, and worst of all, 8 Mother's Days. And I am not alone. There are lots of parents, because of distance where their children live, because of complicated custody issues, because of decisions made long ago, do not get to see the people who could mean the most to them and pass on their values and memories. How did this happen to me? I am not alone. That's why I did that. On the eve of my son's high school graduation 15 years ago, and I was a lifelong sex educator and health educator in the schools, gave him the Good Vibrations book to sex in the 5th grade. He told me his then 16-year-old girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, was pregnant. What did I do? How did I handle this? I went to my therapist, I went to my good friends, to my clergyman, because of the embarrassment and the shame. And they suggested, eventually, because he did this again 2 years later, that I do something to fill the time I could be being a good grandparent, and that was to write letters. So I wrote letters since 2008 and have saved them for the hypothetical day that that grandchild Annie will look me up. This is the first letter I wrote to her. Dear Annie, you'll be having your first day of school sometime this week. That must be exciting. I still have a photo of your father, your biological father, not John, who's doing such a good job of raising you, getting on a big yellow school bus in 1996. He was as handsome and proud as you are beautiful. What's biological father mean? It means that you were born and came part from your mother Susie and part from my son Brad. Dad you knew for a while when you were a baby and some weekends till you were 4. But he went away 2 years ago because he had a drug problem and did not get along with your mom on what I hope is his low road to enlightenment. What's enlightenment? Good question. I think it's about finding peace and being happy with yourself and the world and your place in it. And it has a lot to do with God, but we'll talk about that in other letters. Oh well, I get to love you and envision you growing up safe and sound and getting all the things you deserve in life invisibly. I am the grandma you may not see for a long time or ever again, but I will be sending you good thoughts every day and saving piles of letters. P.S. I hope you get a great kindergarten teacher. Some of the letters I've saved over the years were postcards from all the places we would go. New York City to the Rockettes at Christmas time, Santa Barbara, California missions, upstate New York, Roslyn, Washington. Some were tips about getting old. One especially was this tip. Dear Annie, I have a bad habit I'd like to get rid of. I interrupt people. Sometimes I get so excited about what I am saying that I butt in and say something, or I get impatient and finish their sentences for them. It drives people crazy. When I was growing up in New Jersey, our family was like that. They were the loud family, like on Saturday Night Live. No one listened to one another. I hope you have lots of friends and teachers and relatives, and do listen to them very well. The older I get, the more I think other people have something important to say. And I've learned you can't learn anything from anybody when you're busy spouting a reply. So here's to the many conversations we aren't having. Some letters were about peace when I saw the Arlington West Memorial for the 4,000 soldiers at that point that had lost their lives in Iraq. Some were about politics. I wrote this one in 2012 after the election and the polarity between the red and the blue states. And I said, "Dear Annie, I think we should wear purple tomorrow to show the beautiful color that results when red and blue are mixed. Just think of all the good things that could happen if we set aside our differences and worked for the common good." But those weren't the only kind of letters I wrote. The first Christmas, I found myself writing letters that I would say and never send, specifically to diffuse the negative energy and get it out of my system. Oh, forgot to tell you, I wrote even one letter to Annie on sex, love, and marriage, a hypothetical 17-year-old Annie. And in that letter, I answered a question that was, "You were married 3 times, Grandma, why?" And in that letter, I told her about marriage number 1 and marriage number 2 and exactly why I fell in love with those partners and why I ended those marriages and the gifts in those relationships to me. I also told her why I saved the best for last, her now step-invisible grandparent Larry, my significant equal of 20 years. But those letters that I said and never sent were ones like this. "Dear Annie, I was just bending over the sink, crying, sobbing. The Christmas season makes me very sad and very mad, but most of all, I was crying because your mother sent me her Atherton Family Sending You Holiday Hugs card with no return address on it. All that was inside was a picture of the 5 of you. 5? Wow, I see you have a new baby sister. But maybe that's all your mom wanted to tell, but what a way to do it. I'd sure like to tell someone my version of the truth about your mom, but I'm going to spare you those words. Really, I'll be putting them in a bowl outside and lighting them, turning them into ash, and blowing them away to be forgotten, I wish." I did this, actually, dancing to Janis Joplin's "Take a Little Piece of My Heart." Merry Christmas, Annie. Take a look at the houseplants. We decorate them, because without children, we don't decorate a Christmas tree. And this is another Christmas say it but never send it letter to Annie. Actually, it's not, it's to Annie's mother, Susie. And I did something different at the end of this. "Susie, if guilt would work to get you to allow me to be part of your family, I would secretly instill it in your food. I'd dish it out in big scoops and top it with sprinkles that gave you some sense of an endless pit of sadness I've had in my heart for weeks. How dare you attempt to erase the memory of Grandma Pat from the life of your 5-year-old. My prayer is that when Annie is able to make choices of the kind Brad did, she makes good ones. That she escapes dependency on anything but her own strength and talent to go after her dreams, as apparently her father has not yet. If I could do anything in the world, I'd prevent drug addiction in anyone. Happy New Year, Susie, really." And then I put a PS that tells you a little bit about what I learned here. "Bah, humbug, enough of this. Being grateful for where I am right now and what I do have helps me forget what I don't." So the letters really helped me transform an energy of forgiveness of myself, for any karma I might have had to draw this situation to me, and for the situations and people out of my control. And I learned not to focus on the missing, and I learned gratitude. In that PS, I said, "I am going to drive to the gym in the 65-degree sunshine this 18th day of December and work out to some rock and roll. I will not wallow in this. I will not wallow in this." So my letters basically have been about turning the worst of my times into cosmic triggers for something better, and they turned into this book, which wrote me. And we're gonna go over time, just because Annette was a little under. A year ago, I got this letter from my grandmother in heaven, who would now be 114, and she said, "Patty Cakes, lighten up. Your kids grew up in a loving home. You sat and read to them, raised them to know right from wrong, value honesty and kindness. You need to know that at a certain age, perhaps yours, any kid's choices are not your fault. Forgive yourself and let it go. Remember, our kids come through us, not of us." Cahill Gibran, right? What you need to do is grandmother yourself. Go find something good that you love to do and do it. So I've been thinking about the subtitle of my book, which is Legacy, Leave a Legacy of Love Now Behind, which is the title of our talk. And it's much more than the will or the clothes or the memory books passed on from generation to generation, or the legacy of military service, or perhaps the legacy of genetically passed on illnesses or alcoholism. I have a story about legacy I'd like to share with you, and I will shorten this later. Once I was in the midst of writing this book about 5 years ago and in a writer's block, and a mosquito flew in my eye. Luckily, I was 65 and had Medicare and United Healthcare. And I went to the doctor and he did an eye exam and he covered my right eye after he got the bug out. And there, I could read the chart. He covered my left eye. I couldn't see the wall. Long story short, 5 injections later that cost $4,000, $8,000 each, I passed a driver's test a year ago without glasses. And my free giveaway at this exhibit is what that doctor gave me that day, an Amsler grid, which could prevent you from having an illness, which is on. So I think legacy has much more to do with an invisible vibration that is passed on from generation to generation, such as my husband's grandmother passed to him, and he has a history of working with boats. So you've seen that. And I want you to think, how do you make it go backwards? Well, I think them both are. You can live by yourself. So you can gather friends around. You can choose one special one. Oh, this is the same song. The same song, but shoot. We will work out these. You can gather friends around. You can choose one special one. And the only measure will be the love you leave behind when you're gone. The love you leave behind when you're gone. We all have choices as to what to leave behind. What will yours be? We are hoping you'll come visit us at our booth, get a free Amsler grid, and we invite everybody here today to hear our third presenter, who's our first presenter, Vicki Lane.